mission, but I know I need my gavel thing. Okay, all right, morning everyone. Welcome to the Strategy, Operations and Finance Committee meeting of the 10th of April. To elected members, councillors, community board members, and also to staff and members of the public. Nau mai haere mai. Starting with our council blessing. Ia mātou e whiriwhiri ana i ngā take kei mua i o mātou aro e pono ana mātou kakaha tonu ki te whakapau mahara hua pai mo ngā hāwhore e mahi nei mātou. Me kaha hoki mātou katoa kia whaihua kia tōtika tā mātou mahi a mā te maia te tiro whakamua me te hihiri kataia te arehi i roto i te kotahitanga me te aroha. As we deliberate on the issues before us, we trust that we will reflect positively on the communities we serve. Let us all seek to be effective and just, so that with courage, vision and energy, we provide positive leadership in a spirit of harmony and compassion. Item number 2, apologies. We have Councillor Ko is on a leave of absence. Kim Tahiwi of Ngahapua Otaki is an apology for this morning as well. And the Mayor is on her way back from a breakfast with the Prime Minister, I believe, in Wellington, so she will be here in the next, hopefully, 15 to 30 minutes. I'll move, we accept those apologies. Can I have a seconder? Deputy Mayor Kirby, all those in favour? Aye, against, that's carried. Item number 4, declarations of interest relating to items on the agenda. I haven't been made aware of any, so moving swiftly on. Public speaking time for items relating to the agenda. So we have 2 public speakers this morning, both wanting to speak on item 9.1, district plan and approach for review of coastal provisions. First up, Tanya Lees on behalf of CALM. Welcome to the table, and you've got 5 minutes. If you could just press the button on the right-hand side of the mic and you'll be good to go. Thank you. Over to you.
Good morning to the Mayor, Chief Executive, elected officials and key council staff. I would like to begin by saying that the CALM team would like to comment that a few days' notice to examine the documents referred to in today's agenda is an unrealistic challenge, to say the least. It would be a mistake to assume that the average ratepayer is able to digest all the information in time. Are we able to look at another way of doing this, please? To be honest, the majority of us were surprised to see yet another consultant's report, this time a gap analysis completed by Urban Edge Planning. How much has this cost the ratepayers of your jurisdiction? Why not put the money towards something that's actually useful, such as installing tide gauges, as our esteemed and suitably qualified colleague Sean Rush has recommended? We also don't want another independent panel of cherry-picked scientists set up, because the failings of the Coastal Advisory Panel are still fresh in our minds. The community has lost faith in your processes, as they are only too aware of KCDC's predetermined outcomes that have no resemblance of democracy. With the recent rates hikes, they definitely have no appetite for any more expenditure on what they already perceive as an extravagant folly. So we declare a big vote of no confidence on further processes. You already have the only peer-reviewed statutory report provided to you for free, which is the DeLonghi report. Had Jacobs delivered a coastal hazards risk assessment, which they were contracted to do, then this would have been a different discussion entirely. As we know, Jacobs cannot be legally used for Section 24 of the New Zealand Coastal Policy Statement, which requires likely, not unlikely parameters. We do not want Jacobs accepted and individual hazards placed on our limbs, because general hazards have already caused enough financial harm. However, we acknowledge that the recent addition of DeLonghi on the limbs by Council is a good start in balancing perceptions. We once again urge Council to stick to the law, to listen to your ratepayers and stop wasting money we don't have, and follow a common sense approach of mitigation and monitoring of hazards. We would also ask you to drop any reference to managed retreat, It causes unnecessary panic and affects insurance and property values. All this talk of preparing for rising sea levels is like saying you shouldn't drive your car in case you have an accident. Statistically, the probability is so low that it's a non-event. In closing, I will leave you with an excerpt from an extremely well-written article published by Wellington Live this week, which CALM has sent out to all the councillors. Quote, "So why is the council sticking to this $5 million scare story? Well, my mystery guest reckons it's because they're too dug in to back out. They've spent all this cash, ratepayers' cash, mind you, and admitting it was a waste of money would be a tough pill to swallow. The CAP report even showed that for every dollar spent on managed retreat, the benefits would be less than 1 cent. That's a shocking return. My friend calls it premature evacuation, and honestly, it's hard to argue with that. The numbers just don't add up, yet the council keeps pushing forward, almost like they can't let go of the idea. The council's betting big on a bad hand, and the ratepayers will foot the bill." End of quote. Thank you.
Thank you, Tanya, for your presentation. Do we have questions from the table? I'm not seeing any questions. So, yeah, thank you, Tanya.
Thank you.
Listen up.
Great, thanks for coming in. Now moving on to Salima Padamzi on behalf of Crew, who is dialing in via Zoom. Salima, if you can hear us, your time, you've got 5 minutes and we'll pass over to you.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you just fine, thank you.
Okay, brilliant. Good morning to the Mayor and councillors. I appreciate the opportunity to speak publicly about the agenda item 9.1, District Plan, Approach for Review of Coastal Provisions. In your graph on page 7, 3 significant events have been missed. 1, in 2014, Council Resolution KCDC 14/06/128 to implement coastal hazard provisions in the proposed district plan PDP 2012, using a variation to that proposed plan. 2, the 2016, the Council's commitment to the Environment Court in ENV 2016 WGN 00028, decision number 2017 NZ ENV C31 at paragraphs 34 to 36 to notify a coastal hazards plan change by 2020, 4 years from the date of the 2016 hearing. That copy has been provided to you. The third event that you've missed is the 2025 one. The most recent council resolution, SOF 2024/52, from 5th December 2024, instructs council staff to prioritize progressing RMA Schedule 1 of the coastal plan change. The 2014 resolution directing the council to establish a coastal advisory group has never been implemented. And now we witness it again with the latest resolution to prioritize the coastal plan change under Schedule 1 of the RMA, which, as per the staff report, is now 18 months away. Crew verbally agreed with senior staff to work on a no surprise engagement. Well, I can tell you that these new dates are unexpectedly surprising. Yes, Crew would like to have a constructive relationship with council management, but we expect to be consulted on key issues as required by our Memorandum of Understanding before decisions are made. However, there has been no consultation at all on option C. Why would the council assume that Crew is happy with this when we have been assured that you are working towards mid-2025? I received an email from council on 7th, 2024 with specific dates regarding coastal plan change. You should have a copy of that in front of you. But the part I want to focus on is, and I quote, the key deliverables along with indicative milestones Timings pending confirmation by council of the required timeframes for this plan change will include a full draft revision of the plan change to be issued for feedback no later than 28 February 2025, and a proposed plan change and Section 32 evaluation report to be presented to council for approval to publicly notify no later than 30th July 2025. Since then, we have not received any updates regarding dates other than the Section 35 reports, which, as I have mentioned to you in January, do not fall under Schedule 1 of the RMA. I understand that on 30th January that the council had received legal advice. It's on the record that you were legally obliged to take a Section 35 report as instructed by what I understand to be from Buddle Finlay. I know from experience that council's culture is to weaponize legal opinions against the community to shut down discussions. Last year, the council successfully sought legal advice against including the DeLonghi report in the LIMS, as Mr. Edwards informed crew in December. Now you have a legal opinion that allows you to include the DeLonghi report in the LIMS. This kind of legal inconsistency reflects how the council engages with its community, and in particular crew. You repeatedly make assurances and then abandon them without talking to the people you gave them to. This breeds a lack of trust in the organization and its processes. With extensive experience in dealing with council since 2012, we recognize that the December 2026 deadline, option C, will likely be postponed. After all, elected officials' motions and promises to the Environment Court seem irrelevant to this council. But it is important to resolve the science. Crew suggested this back in January. Nothing seems to have happened other than preliminary discussions. You know Crew's view on the science. But the practical reality is that relying on your science will lead to years of delay, litigation, and costs, and more ratepayers' fuel for the consultancy machine. Using the Crew science will enable a plan change to go through quickly and let the council begin the monitoring program, which will tell us more about the scale of the actual problem you are trying to manage. I respectfully urge the council to consider rejecting option C and supporting option A. By prioritizing option A, the council would fulfill its commitment to the community regarding a plan change and exemplify the integrity of elected officials in honoring their promises. And this is what the staff promised us in the email of 7th May 2024. However, I understand that option 1 is no longer feasible due to the RMA consultation requirements. An intermediate option might be between 1 and 2. A and B. An intermediate option between A and B is feasible and desirable to finally move this plan change forward. We suggest September 2025. I would also like to bring to your attention KCDC's final submission to the Environment Court, CIV 201748500627. At paragraph 3, the council states, quote, "The council respectfully acknowledges and accepts those comments from the Environment Court regarding the timing. If in the future there is a concern that the council is not acting as promptly as is reasonable in the circumstances in accordance with Section 21, a declaration could be sought from the Environment Court to that effect. If this council is unwilling to honor its commitment to prioritize the coastal plan change, we will have no choice but to initiate an enforcement order proceeding in the Environment Court." Thank you.
Thank you, Salima. Do we have any questions from committee members? Councillor Cooper.
Thanks, Salima. It's probably morning in Canada, is it, or night? I'm not sure, but thanks.
It's wine time.
It's wine time. Yeah, and well, I might have one shortly myself. Just a question. This process has been, we're a decade into it now plus. For the sake of 4 or 5 months, 10 months, do you think it's wise that we actually put a process in place that is really thorough so that we don't end up in the situation that we have in the past, so that we work through everything methodically and engage the people in the right way? Or
Well,
is your suggesting we sort of rush this at the last minute? So
okay,
what do you
so
think about that?
that's a really good question. So thank you for that. So I'm not asking you to rush anything. This was due in 2020. So you have, or council has not rushed anything of it at all. But you have option A that says to do it by July 2025, at least the notification. And that option is there because obviously council can achieve it, or else why would it be there? But my main concern is that we are not willing to wait another year. 2026 will turn to 2027. You might have staff leave, you might have new staff. Who knows? I'm not prepared on behalf of my members to further delay this process. We are 5 years out of date. And all the information is there. You have a consultant, you've hired a consultant, you have a consultant's report, you have a section 35 report in the gap report that tells you that the current coastal hazard provisions are way out of date and need replacing, and that's all you have to do. It's not a big job, it's not going to take a long time. Most of it can already be done. I mean, if it was my team, we could do it in 2 weeks. So I'm not asking you to move heaven and earth and rush through it. Everything you have is there. There is no reason for any further delay.
Thanks. Thank you, Salima. Thanks.
Any further questions from the table? Oh, Councillor Pravanov, online.
Thank you, through the chair. Thank you for Salima for dialing in today. I actually had a very similar question to Councillor Cooper in terms of what your thoughts were on being able to complete this in, I suppose, the shorter time frames that are given there. So that's either July this year or September. So what you're saying, just to reiterate this, is that council staff have all the information and there is no need to delay that. Is that correct?
Yes, council staff do have all the information and you can do it. It's just a matter of whether there is a political will to do it.
Thank you. Thank you. And I'll actually just to flag this, I'll be asking staff whether or not they have all the information as well. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Pravanov. Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, thanks, Salima. Just a couple of points. One is that thank you for acknowledging that a hybrid of A and B, it's central government changes to legislation that prevent this stuff, which also assist in the delays. But just to the threats of legal action, do you not think that that in itself causes significant delays?
Well, I understand what you are saying, but all I can tell you is the level of frustration that we are facing in getting this done. It was a year late, 2 years late, 3 years late, 4 years late, 5 years late. What would you have us do, Nigel? Would you have us wait until 2026 and then there is another delay and another delay? If you have the political will to action this now, you don't have to worry about an RMA revision. You will get it in before and if there is a new RMA statutory position. So this could be done fairly easily. It could be done fairly cost effectively. And I think what I really would like to impress upon you is that we are exhausted.
Yep, it's an exhausting process. I can agree with that. Anyway, thanks for that, Salima. Cheers.
Great. Thank you so much, Salima. I'm not seeing any further questions. We really appreciate you, chiming in all the way from Canada and speaking. And feel free to stay online for the rest of the meeting.
Great.
If the
Thank you.
time
Just in
allows.
time for the Maple Leaf to drop the hockey puck.
All right, ka kite Salima, thank you.
Ciao.
Alrighty, so no further public speakers this morning. Takes us to members' business, item number 7, leaves of absence. Let the Mayor's office know if you would like to request one. Matters of urgent nature have not been made aware of any. There are no updates on today's agenda, so that takes us through to reports. Up first is 9.1 District Plan Approach for Review of Coastal Provisions. So Jason Holland will welcome you up to the table, and I think initially Chris to introduce the paper as well. Great, thank you. Over to you, Chris.
Thank you. As an opening to this paper, I think I will set the scene by saying today we are seeking your agreement to essentially kickstart our work to progress to the point of notification a plan change for coastal provisions. Jason and Corinne from Urban Edge are here to, we will step you through the paper today, just acknowledging some of the complexity that a plan change involves, and to note that we have, from the advice we've had and requirements that are set out in legislation, progressed points to have assessed a Section 79 review, which is, do we need to undertake a plan change? And the paper essentially says we believe there are grounds to do that. And secondly, that we are undertaking the second requirement before we get into the plan change itself around a Section 35 report, which effectively provides an update on monitoring and reporting. With that in mind, I think the last thing I'll say is you're aware that plan changes are set through legislation. They have set requirements that we undertake. Just using PC2 as a slight example, you recall that we put out a draft proposal to notification, following which people could submit. There were hearings, and then the recommendations from that panel came back to you to then make a decision. Today, we're all the way at the beginning of this process, whereby we are starting or asking you to approve us to start work so that we can get a draft proposal together for consideration to go out to notification. So, Jace, I'll hand over to you and you can step us through. Thank you.
Tēnā koutou katoa. Well, this is a big day. There's no doubt about it. It would be the understatement of the century to say there's a bit of history to this. And we thought it would be helpful to actually try to capture that in summary form in this report. Now, inevitably, when you've got a story that goes this long and has so many events in it, it's never going to be a completely comprehensive story. Acknowledge that, but we have tried to, I guess, sort of identify at least some of the most seminal events. Putting that to one side and not at all wanting to underestimate the significance of the history, but we are now where we are. And where we are today, we have, for your consideration, a worked through process and approach which could take us from where we are today to notification of a coastal plan change that provides enough time for engagement in a way that meets commitments that council has made and in line with what the legislation and the higher order policy requires in terms of process. It also is an approach which acknowledges the existence of the DeLonghi report but goes far further than that and says this deserves due consideration as part of the process and indeed as really the first step of the process. When you are pulling all that together, and there is a chart that shows that in the attachments, it does lead to a number of stages of work that needs to be done and some time in order for that to be completed properly. That is why option C is the option that's being recommended. There is also in this paper recognition that this process in the recommendation of staff needs to go further than just looking at coastal hazards. The scope that's being recommended in this paper is broader than that. The scope looks at coastal provisions in a more holistic way, and it brings in coastal provisions that deal with things like coastal natural hazards, as well as coastal natural character, I should say. So it's looking at coastal management holistically. That is what is being recommended to you. And when you look at the process, it's indicating that actually you don't extend the time by having that wider scope. There is the ability to progress work in parallel, and so option C and that wider scope is able to be achievable with that wider scope. And it's not really extended because of the natural character component. So really today, subject to your decision making, is a recognition that we've moved through Takatai Kapiti. Takatai Kapiti was completed June last year. That step is done. Now we are into what your priority, you've told us, is. That is the coastal plan change. We're looking forward to working with all of our stakeholders, including Crew, including the North Otaki Beach Residents Group, but also including our iwi partners, our regional council colleagues, Greater Wellington, and the wider community, because it's really important to recognise that this process allows for fulsome community engagement as well, with enough time to do that to a really, really good standard. I think that's about me. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Jason, for that introduction, and Chris as well, but also all of the work and thinking and consideration and lining up of bits and pieces that's gotten us to this report and the recommendations in front of us. I'll take questions from the table, noting to the scope of the recommendations on the table, which are predominantly around approving the scope of the coastal plan change, including coastal hazards, but also other coastal provisions, and also the recommended timing. So, Councillor Cooper.
Thanks, Jason and Chris. Just on a couple of questions around the science. So we have you're talking about the science and agreeing on the science, but we have the Dr. DeLonghi report, which meets RMA planning standards. So isn't that science agreed then for the purposes of the plan change? We've got the one report that meets statutory standards. Why don't we just use that? Why do we need to go out and start talking about it again when we've got the report that meets the standard?
Thank you. I think you recall that last year the council received that report. Our next step is to effectively look at to determine the best available information for a plan change. Receiving the report does not mean that we have acknowledged that is the best information available. When we met with Dr. DeLonghi, he himself suggested to us that we undertake a piece of work where we looked at the Jacobs report and his work and looked to effectively compare and determine which elements of it best supported the way forward. So on the basis of that, we have been in conversations with Crew in particular about how that might progress forward, given that they put that report on the table. That would align, we think, to the most appropriate way forward, given that there's two pieces of, I think, acknowledged scientific analysis on the table. We would not be proposing to determine which is the best piece of science. We would like somebody else to provide advice just on those reports so that we can put that back on the table and move forward.
Great, thank you. So just in respect to that work, what do we know what sort of time frame that science piece of work will take? And does that, the rest of the work, Jay's talked about things working in parallel. I'm assuming other work can progress while that's being discussed, because that may take, what's your expectation of that work in terms of the time frame?
Thanks, Councillor. So you do have a project chart as one of your attachments, and I'll sort of help you navigate through it. The project chart breaks down the work into different phases, and so in terms of phases A and B of the coastal hazards part, those are the first two kind of blocks in the project chart. What is being proposed here is initially the panel's review would take until potentially around, say, mid-July 2025, and then time after that extends out to late 2025 for the panel's recommendations to be implemented. The work that would happen in parallel with that would not be on coastal hazards. It would be on the other component of the plan change, and that recognises that really the science is the foundation on which you then need to move forward with the provisions, and we don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves until we sort the science.
Yep. So I'm just thinking, you can't do the appropriate consultation with our partners until that science piece is agreed. Would that be a fair comment?
Yeah, I would agree. We can't consult on what the solution is until we get that foundation technically as right as we can.
So would that actually preclude option A then?
I think
which
option
is literally
A
2 months away?
Is infeasible, to be honest, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Because my line of question is just because I don't think that option A is feasible either. I think that's not practical. But I'm just trying to work out whether option B would be a feasible and practical midway point. So some of my question is sort of me trying to work out whether this work can be progressed with the due diligence that's required, because it's important. So that leads to my next question. Has there been engagement with our iwi partners as to their capacity and capability and what time frame they would need for us to do the appropriate consultation? Or is that yet to come?
We've had a conversation, but I wouldn't give that the credence of being engagement at this level of detail yet. No, it's a work in progress.
Okay.
But to say that they are aware that this plan change will be a priority, and as part of our engagement with them about the things that are coming up each year or a couple of years, we have put this to the top of the list of things that we would be progressing.
Okay, so can I make an assumption that because B is an option, that we would think that B is doable for that particular consultation part? We're not sure.
Well, I think if you draw a line, again with reference to the project chart, if you draw a line down in February next year and you saw, I guess, what had been done and what was left to do, certainly with the approach that's set out here, it wouldn't work. And I think there would be real serious questions about the feasibility of rejigging it in such a massive way that you could properly review the science, properly engage with stakeholders, properly do a full community consultation on a draft, and have confidence that February is feasible as well. And that doesn't even take into account the election period and the difficulties that adds.
If I may just add to the table of paper in terms of risks that have been identified, is that you're aware that there are still reforms being driven by central government. We know that there are particular reforms relevant to this plan change. Given the time that we're proposing to push this through, somewhere between now and the end of 26, we will inevitably be impacted by those reforms, and we will be required to respond to those. So we've also acknowledged that that is going to impact/influence this process, and have enabled time in here to respond to that.
One last question, because I know there's other lights. Just one last question is, in respect to if we vote something will be voted through today, and a work program will be voted, whether it's probably A, B or C. In terms of the local body elections, so then it becomes a work program for staff. So in terms of local body elections, when we end up with a new council in October, activating sort of November going forward, for that work program to change, it would require a motion from the floor to alter the work program.
I'm going to say,
Does that make sense?
in short, yes. Yeah. And I think I'll add to that to say that while we are seeking your approval to proceed with this, the driver for it is legislatively based. And you did hear from public speaking from Salima that obviously this has been some time in landing at this table. We are progressing this as a priority on that basis.
Yep. So I just wonder when the risk on option B may overlap with local election timeframes, significant decision would be early in the new triennium. But there won't be any decision in the new triennium, will there? Because
I think the decision we're talking about is to the point of notification, and what we're signalling to you in that table is we do not believe that February 2026 is viable because of the election, because there's a period of downtime, because we, as we normally do, go through an induction process with the new council to get them across work that's underway. We wouldn't expect a new council to make a decision on this, this degree of complexity in February. That would be very unusual, and we'd propose that they would probably signal to us that they didn't feel that they had enough information to support the conversation to make a decision at that point in time.
great, thank you. Cheers. Thanks, Jason, Chris.
Councillor Halliday.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. I'm just trying to get some times clarified in my head. With PC2, and there's just reference to PC2, we had that consultation. It was quite a thorough consultation process, very thorough consultation process. We went out to the community before the actual full consultative process. Is that what we're doing here?
This has an extra component of a period of time where we're working with our iwi partners and key stakeholders in front of doing that as well.
And are we looking at doing that before that time frame of December 26?
That's right.
So we're in effect going to be going through that preliminary, what is pretty much a full consultative process on a draft one, to take that feedback in, and then the second stage of that would be, should we say, a more streamlined process, because hopefully a lot of that information's come through, but like it did with PC2.
Yeah, if you like, you can think of it as having 3 phases of consultation. The first phase being targeted consultation, iwi partners and key stakeholders. Second stage, full community consultation on a draft. third stage is notification. That is when it's the formal stage. People have to prepare like a formal submission. But before that, this builds in those two other phases. So
Right.
this is a thorough process, and it's, I would call, best practice.
Yeah, look, I mean, PC2 took us a couple of years for that reason, but it did lead to a very robust process. When that report, or let's say that process is done by December 26th, and we go out to the full consultation process, I fully understand that, this is a bit of a which comes first, chicken or the egg, but ideally, what sort of time frame do you think that would be before, we go through that proper, I shouldn't say proper, the whole process is proper, but we go through the formal process, shall we say. How long do you think that would take from December 26?
After that, so the steps after notification, there'll be a period of time for submissions that council needs to decide. The stock standard time for a plan change like this is 20 working days. My advice to council would be to make that longer. Then there's a period under the RMA of further submissions when people get the chance to make submissions on each other's submissions. There's then a hearing panel would be appointed, and those submitters who sought to be heard can take their case to the hearings panel. Hearings panel considers all those submissions and retires, goes away, prepares a report, basically advising council what it thinks it should do with the plan change. Council then has the decision of whether it wants to adopt the panel's recommendations as its own decision. That's typically what happens. The RMA says from notification to when council makes that decision, that must be done within 2 years. Exactly how long that will actually take, we'll have to figure that out, but that's what the RMA's saying is the maximum period it can take.
That's from December 26.
That's from December 26, yes.
Right, okay, so it's a very similar process to what we went through with PC2 at that point.
Yeah, it is similar. PC2 had slightly unique legislation that was introduced, but
I get there'll be different parts to it.
broadly speaking, yes.
Yeah, okay, look, thank you very much.
That was all of your questions, Councillor Hurley?
Just seeing if there's...
Yeah, I can if you want. Question from my boss, thought it might be a good idea to clarify in terms of the provisions having legal effect and when that happens. There's actually going to be, I think, in fact, the RM Amendment Bill that's just been proposed and has already had submissions closed, talked about having natural hazards provisions having immediate legal effect. So if that's passed, then from December 2026, the provisions would have legal effect. At the moment, that isn't the case, but that's what the government is signalling they think it should be.
And hopefully there won't be any other rule changes that come through between then as such, but who knows, as we well know. Okay, thank you.
We would comment though that we were aware of the reforms that are being proposed on the basis of that, and obviously lessons learnt from the last time we were looking at coastal provisions, ensuring that we've got appropriate consultation and engagement in advance of that notification point seems to be a really important thing for us to have considered as we present this to you.
As a follow-up to that, this government's is trying to shortcut stuff, one way of putting it. And this is completely speculative. I fully appreciate that. But is there a chance that we might get to a certain stage and then we get actually directed by central government to do certain things around all this, and that might change things yet again?
Well, we are aware that there is a national policy statement on natural hazards decision making in the works, and we understand that there will be consultation on that later this year, and we also understand it's going to be in place by the end of the year. What we don't understand is what is it going to tell us to do. So this is one of the factors that was mentioned in the council report as one of those moving pieces that it's much better to know where, like, for them to actually finish their thing, so we know where we're trying to get to. It's much better to know that before you get to notification. There's a lot of things that once you get to notification get harder and more expensive. The other thing is the science. The more we can get to a point where we've ironed out differences to the extent we can, the better, before notification, because it just makes that hearing process that much longer and harder if it's still being heavily debated, the various assumptions at that point. You want to do your best to try to get that stuff sorted before you get into the formal statutory RMA notification post process.
Lovely. Thank you for that. Sorry, it's a bit of a on-the-spot question, but yeah, thank you for your thoughts.
Thank you. We'll go to Councillor Wilson and then Councillor Pravanov will come to you next.
Oh, I just wanted to move the recommendations, but if you've still got more questions.
Oh, yep, I'll note that and come back to you. Thanks, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Pravanov? Oh, sorry, you're muted. Might just have to wait for you to be... can't hear you just yet. Yep,
Okay.
we should be able to hear you now if you...
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. So, as I indicated earlier on, I just wanted to check with staff to see whether we have all the information available to move forward with this plan change. You know, obviously some of the information will have to be reformatted into various reports, but do we have all the information?
No, in short.
What is missing?
Well, for example, we have a genuinely open mind to what the scientific foundation of this plan change should be.
What does that mean?
It means you've got two reports. You've got the body of work that Jacobs has done. Council's received the DeLonghi report. And we have an open mind as to what the best available information is.
But we do have all the information.
Just for completeness, Jocelyn, we're saying we don't have the information we need to move forward. We have two sets of scientific analysis, which we are wanting to assess and determine one pool, I'll call it, of scientific analysis to then inform our next steps.
Okay, thank you for that. So just looking at this chart, the first thing that's going to occur is setting up a panel. Now, if we agree with option C, that's basically a fait accompli, and we haven't actually really even discussed whether we want a panel or not. And that, yeah, so I think, what are the options of not having a panel? And I know that we went through this process when we set up Takatai Kapiti.
I think the reason that that is in the timeline is because part of the history that is outlined in the paper and you'll be aware of is that currently there are disagreements on the scientific basis. When we spoke to, I will call them our experts, including Dr. DeLonghi, it was suggested that getting a small panel together to look at the two pieces of analysis was an appropriate way forward. We're in discussions at the moment around what that would look like, but ideally, given that Crew commissioned DeLonghi's work and Council had already commissioned the piece that we have from Jacobs, we were looking to establish a very small panel of experts that are nominated from each party to do a very discrete piece of work, just looking at the two reports and giving us advice on the way forward so that we could take next steps. So the word panel, I think, might be conceived or viewed as the broadest term. We are talking about just essentially 2 or 3 people with relevant expertise to look at those two reports who are independent. And so that's what we've been discussing with Crew as we have started to develop the proposal that's on the table.
Okay, thank you, Chris. I'm sorry, I know that, these are quite detailed questions, but to me, if we don't talk about this now and have clear understanding, we don't know what we're getting ourselves in for. So, so just following up on that, you said that there'll be a small panel nominated from each party. So who is actually each party?
Yes, we have been and are in discussions with Crew. As I mentioned, they commissioned and tabled DeLonghi's work, and therefore we've seen it as appropriate for Council and Crew to commission people that we think we mutually agree are suitable to consider the science that has been tabled.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so then, because obviously this is option C we're looking at here. So when it looks at phase B, it talks about implement panel recommendation. What does that actually mean? Because that's actually 17 weeks worth.
Yeah, I'm just going to note, and then Jace might be able to give you a more detailed overview. Essentially, given that there's two different reports and pieces of analysis, I obviously can't predict what those experts may say to us, but the agreement we were seeking with Crew was we would both agree to the recommendations that were tabled by the experts and then look to effectively pull together some information that reflected the outcomes they'd proposed. Jace, you may want to expand on that.
Oh, not too much really. I mean, we're anticipating that the scientists on the panel will provide guidance on some, like the technical assumptions that are the right ones to take, and that there will need to be some rework and some sort of an end product that becomes the new foundation for the science after that review. We don't have all the answers to exactly what that looks like yet, because obviously there's more work in terms of, well, the panel has to firstly be appointed, then it has to come up with its recommendations. But broadly speaking, that's how we're thinking it would work.
Okay, so then you've got phase 3 and then phase D, which is preparing the section 32. So I'm just wondering why that can't be done at the same time as phase B, or directly after you're basically in concurrently with phase 3C. Sorry, I know I'm getting into the detail here, but this is actually looking at this time frame.
Yeah.
Might I just note, ahead of Jace making any further detailed comments, that we have engaged an independent expert planner, Urban Edge, to support us with this plan change. And we have looked at and unpacked the work that needs to progress and how the different phases link together. So some of the phases, including the science, are actually input to the next steps. And so Jace will give you more detail of that, but essentially they aren't discrete, separate swim lanes. They're quite connected. Jace, do you want to expand on that?
Yeah, well, you pretty much nailed it, really. I talked a bit about you want your sort of evidence foundation, and then you move into what the solution is. As you eloquently said, that there's a clear connection between what the solution is and what the actual story is underpinning it in terms of the science. You don't want to get too far ahead of yourself with figuring out what you think the answer is until you have that basis sorted. So it's as simple as that, really.
Yeah, I might just note that once the science has landed, some of the work that is next step includes looking at what scenarios we would actually look to put on literal maps in the district that would be considered as part of the proposal and the notification that we engage the community on. So at this stage, we have not developed those maps. We are waiting to land the science before we head into even that stage.
Yeah, because I suppose when I look at this here, to me, you know, I don't know when you consulted with the company whether or not you gave them a, you know, the shortest time frame to do this in, or whether you, or what, or how you framed that. I don't know how you did that, but to me, there seems to be a lot of there's no concurrency in here. I think there probably could be a lot more. And then I suppose, I think Jason mentioned how the scope of this has changed. And then so where does that come in? So what phase is that in?
So there's a few things in there. The concurrency is where, while the science review and science implementation is going on, some progress is made on those parts of the coastal provisions review that aren't reliant on that. And so that's the coastal natural character work. This is the first time you've talked about scope, so there's no change of scope. This is the actual conversation you've had today about scope. And that is the other components of what we are proposing to include in the scope, i.e. the natural character related provisions. There's a couple of reasons for proposing that. One is that there has been a commitment made to DOC, and you've got a letter as attachment 1, which is a council commitment to initiate a plan change to look at coastal natural character and biodiversity. And the other is that the gap analysis itself has found that there are some shortcomings in terms of those provisions, particularly the rules and how they align with higher order legislation and policy. So that's the reason why that's been included in scope. And also, most fundamentally, it's actually good to do an integrated, holistic approach to coastal and not kind of draw an artificial barrier, because sometimes there are some connections that you don't see until you're halfway through a planning process. So it is a better practice way of reviewing the coastal provisions if you do it with this slightly wider scope.
Okay, thank you. But I think you also made the comment that this wasn't going to extend this process, but when you look at this Gantt chart, it actually extends it by 4 months.
I don't see that, Councillor. Can you help me understand that?
Yep, so you've got E, and then you've got basically only starts in August 26 and goes through to November 26.
Right, I can explain. That phase is the phase for, as it's titled, final pre-notification consultation. That's not just coastal natural character. That's when it all comes together and there is full community consultation on the draft. Councillor Halliday talked about PC2. He talked about the fact that we did a full draft and that went out to the public and we got 200 odd bits of feedback there. That's what that is. So it's not, just to be crystal clear, that's not an extension resulting from coastal natural character being in scope. That is the phase where the community gets the chance to have a really good look and provide feedback, and for council to consider that feedback on coastal hazards and coastal natural character before it gets to notification. It's about getting that notified product as good as it can be, and one of the reasons why that's even more important now is what Chris asked me to explain to you, which is there's a high likelihood that these, particularly the coastal hazard parts, will have immediate legal effect. So that puts even more, like, we've got to get those notified provisions as good as we can. It is incredibly important for everybody that council does as good a job on that as it possibly can.
Okay, thank you. So my last question is, I'm pretty certain I have heard the CE saying that no more money is going to be spent on this Takatai Kapiti process. How much is this budgeted to cost?
If I might note that this is not Takatai Kapiti. So this is a district plan change, and just to give context, each triennium we set out a district plan change program, which comes to council for consideration and approval. In January, obviously, you resolved that progressing this plan change was to be a priority for staff, which today we're coming back to kick off this process as the priority in the work program for district planning. The reason that a coastal plan provision is required in a district plan is set by central government and legislation. It is not something that council itself chooses to progress.
Okay, thank you. So, and the budget?
I'll need to come back to you.
Thanks, Councillor
So-
Barnov. Was that your last question? I'm just aware there's a
was.
couple of other people with
Yeah.
lights
Okay.
on as well.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Mayor Kirby.
Mine's only going to be a couple of short ones, hopefully, anyway. Just in your intro, Chris, you said that we're starting work. My assumption to that is we've done a lot of work previously in this area around coastal hazards and all of that. You're twice saying starting work is directly related to the fact that this is the official start of a plan change process versus the stuff that we've done previously that all will feed into and inform that work. Is that a fair summary of what you were meaning by starting work today?
Yep, that's a very good summary, acknowledging that I think we've been in this discussion since 1999. So I'm going to say it's the current phase of work related to actually the coastal plan change for the district plan. Other work that has progressed has been as a result of the outcomes of mediation, post-litigation, and other decisions that have occurred. So we are now through those and in a position where we are saying to you that we think we can move forward with the district plan change itself.
Fantastic, thank you.
Councillor Cockford.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. Oh, thanks, Chris, Jason. Just on a practical side and further to Deputy Mayor Kirby's question, and with reference to the coastal management, coastal hazard science, PC2, I understand, has been adopted in the Operative District Plan already. And are you happy with administering the Operative District Plan as it stands in the interim? Are there any glaring risks that you can see there with regard to no-build zones and relocation zones and things like that?
Well, it requires review, Councillor. There's no doubt about it. The gap analysis is pointing to alignment issues. Look, council just has to implement the existing district plan until such time as it can progress a plan change to change it. That's the way it is. It's been that way for obviously quite some time, particularly in terms of the coastal hazard provisions. We just have to do our job in implementing it as it is until we can work through what it should look like, and then we'll, if it has immediate legal effect, then we'll need to start implementing that. Right. So it's just the way it is.
As I understand it, the relocation zone and the no build zone were triggered in the mid-70s when 3 houses were washed into the surf. And that was just a freak storm, nothing to do with global change, global warming. And the risk still is there, isn't it? It could happen any time.
Well, one of the things I should add is that the Section 35 review that's underway will be exploring just how effective the existing provisions have been. We want to learn from the implementation lessons of them, and that will be a part of the process.
So could we just continue with that forever without all this?
No.
Okay.
No, and that's why one of the recommendations that is before you is to agree that those 1999 provisions require alteration. The gap analysis is the evidence base for that. Our advice is they do, and you need to be, therefore, or you being us, council, council needs to be working on what does that alteration need to look like, and that's what a large part of this process is all about.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Mayor Holborough, and then we'll go to Councillor Wilson, who is looking to move the recommendations.
Yes, my question was kind of asked and answered by Deputy Mayor Kirby. I just want to be crystal clear on where we are in this process and the reasons why we're here today. Am I right in thinking that we're here today because we're obliged to have up-to-date coastal provisions around coastal hazards and coastal environment, and we need to make sure that we review and update them as necessary, and that we have been doing this piece of work for quite a while already, including the Takutai Kapiti process, which will feed in as appropriate, and that it is not simply the result of a resolution that was made by this committee in February or anything like that. It is because we have been and continue to progress this work in a considered way because we need to keep our district plan up to date. I'm
Correct.
just trying to make that clear. I just want to make sure I'm right about that, which is why I brought it up during question time instead of debate, to allow staff the opportunity to comment.
Yes, that is absolutely correct.
Great, thank you. Councillor Wilson, you'd like to move the recommendations on page 6 as they are?
Yeah, and
Yep.
it includes option C.
Yep, including option C, so just, yep, completely as they are.
Okay.
Seconded, Mayor Holbrook, right of introduction, Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, just I would note a couple of things. One is that this is very significant. This is actually the start of something really important, but as has already been pointed out, it's not the actual start, it's just the start of the plan change. The notifying a plan change is a big deal, and so there's been an enormous amount of time and energy spent getting us to the point that we're at. I think it's the reason I thought option C made sense is that we want to do this right. It's really important that we do this right. We've had examples in the past where it hasn't been the case, so I would rather take a bit of extra time. I also agree the option C takes an holistic approach. As people will know, I'd like the idea of taking a holistic approach to everything, and this fits in with that. The idea of being able to do it quickly, you could, but there are a number of factors to be considered. One of which would be just the internal resource constraints. You know, it's like you can bring in battalions of people to get it done quickly, but that's very costly. Also, I'd acknowledge the frustration that delays cause to residents, but you know, people have been dealing with this since last century, at the end of last century, but it was last century. So again, this comes back to the idea that getting it right is absolutely fundamental, and I think the plan as it's laid out in option C does that. It also acknowledges that there is political risk. There's an election coming up. So there are political risks. There's central government political risks all the time. There's also option C, I think, allows much more for that. We would have to give any changes to the NPS, we would have to consider that. So rushing anything ahead of that would make no sense whatsoever. You might push you back and have to start again. So all of the recommendations move us forward, actually, but I think option C does it in a very considered way. That's it.
Thanks, Councillor Wilson. Completely agree with everything you've said. Mayor Holbrook.
Yeah, I'll talk all those comments. I just want to acknowledge the work that's gone into this and the sensible approach we have in front of us. Also, the analysis in the appendix is really useful, and I do note that the conclusion of that report is not that we have terrible provisions that desperately and urgently need updating, but that we have some improvements that need to be made through a comprehensive review. And I think you can't do comprehensive quickly. And it was rushing this process that got us into a big pickle in the first place. I know, because I was around then, and I would hate to see that happening again. So I think it's best that we step through this carefully and in a considered way. And I think this report in front of us provides a very sensible way to do that. So thanks to staff.
Great, not seeing any other contributions to debate. So moved by Councillor Wilson, seconded Mayor Holbrook, recommendations A through D. All those in favour? Aye. Against? That's carried. I just realised I forgot to give you a right of reply. I'm sorry, did you? Okay, well, I feel like you pretty much surely said everything. Yeah, great, okay. Surely. Great, thank you so much to the team. Appreciate that. Okay. Cool, I think we can probably keep on moving if people are, yep. Oh, sorry, Jocelyn, you've got your hand up. Apologies, it didn't come up on my mic screen, so I missed that. Do you want to just pop something in the chat and we will respond to it, Councillor Provanov?
I wanted to have our votes counted on that, please.
Sorry, you wanted to call a division, Jocelyn?
Yep.
Okay. Yep. That's been requested, so we shall record it. Oh, yeah, Chris is just getting the bit of paper, Jocelyn, which explains the slight lull.
Yep, that's fine.
Yeah. Okay.
Can we do fours?
Yep, so all those four.
I have.
Sorry, Jocelyn, just you've got your hand up right now, so it's hard to know whether you're voting for. Yep, division. So voting for, please raise your hand.
Okay, I have Councillor Hanford, the Mayor, Councillor, where are you, Coford, the Deputy Mayor, I have Councillor Warwick, I have Councillor Cooper, Councillor Wilson, Councillor Halliday, Councillor Spires.
And against?
And against.
Councillor Provanov, I'm presuming that's... Yep, Councillor Provanov against.
Noted.
Thank you.
Okay, so moving straight on to item 9.2, Economic Development Strategy 2024 to 27, go live. I believe Gina and maybe Mark and Darren. Great, welcome up to the table. Noting that our recommendations in this report are simply to note three things. Sorry team, if I could just call your attention back into the meeting, that would be great. So the recommendations that have been put forward by staff are simply that we note that stakeholder and community engagement was completed between January and March 2025 that we requested. That one change was made as a result of this feedback, and that now the new ED strategy will be published on the Business Kapiti webpage, which we had a kind of sneak preview of just the other day. So with that and noting the scope again of this report and recommendations, we'll pass over to Chris.
Thank you. I'll just add to that to say that you had previously endorsed the substantive content of the strategy, so we are not asking you to consider that again. We have shared the summary of feedback from our consultation, which was extensive. The change that was noted by the Chair was in relation to feedback from our construction sector, which was a sector you asked us to deliberately engage through our consultation. Their feedback was to include some additional actions around regulatory and our engagement with business. So that has been discussed previously but included. And we discussed that we, as part of our process with our strategies, bringing our strategies to life online rather than in print. And that's part of our, I'm going to say, fiscal prudence in terms of ensuring that we're affordably making information available. People can print it off, but we will not be looking to put things in print related to their strategy. So in the document, we'd appended some snapshots of the new web pages that will be going live, and we had shared a bit more of that detail with you last week. So on the basis of that, happy to take questions.
Deputy Mayor Kirby.
I was just going to say I'll move the motions.
Great.
So
I
noted.
will. Yep, I'll note that and we'll come back to you once questions have been taken. Councillor Spies.
Thank you. Just wondering, it says all businesses and stakeholders were engaged. So just wondering, did somebody actually physically visit like the Paraparaumu Beach shops and the Kena Kena shopping centres? Did someone actually go around and engage with all the smaller communities?
So the consultation that was run through the chair of the EDKB and focused on bringing together some of those stakeholders. So it wasn't a door-to-door visiting every business. It was engaging with key stakeholder groups. Is there anything you want to add to that, Darren? We did have physical pop-up sessions at the libraries for people to come in and talk to us if they wish to as well.
I'm just going to add that this was our third round of consultation on the economic development strategy. And so over the last year or so, there's been multiple opportunities for people to have their say.
So they were all aware that this was going on?
We have we made that publicly available. We had a Have Your Say page up and running, and as noted by Gina, we had also targeted workshops and pop-up sessions that anybody could drop into.
It was also advertised through Everything Kapiti and social media channels as well.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Spies. Councillor Cooper.
Just to clarify, in 10.1, page 19, in line with previous feedback, Have Your Say, 50% of submitters thought the strategy would meet the needs of the community, 66% were happy or neutral, and 30% didn't like it at all. That comes to over 100%. Are they from different surveys?
Yes, sorry. They're in the attachment. There's two different surveys.
Yep, and just note that we weren't unanimous in this strategy or the direction. There were some members that, I know the table voted for it, but there were some of us who don't like it.
Yeah, no, that's valid to point out.
I'm happy to support the motion today because it's just noting the good work that council does.
Great, thanks, Councillor Cooper. Community Board Chair Bede Larissy.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd noticed that on the day it was the councillors who were actually in business who voted against it, which is interesting. I've got a couple of questions about the content of this, what's in the agenda and the appendices, and I just want to get some clarification. Councillor Cooper just noted the point on page 19, 10.1 about 50% of happiness. Doesn't strike me as a high rate of happiness. Also, it states that 66% of feedback was people were happy or neutral, but I feel like that's actually a bit distorted because actually 20% of the, sorry, I've had a head injury this week and my brain is not tracking properly, but forgive me if I'm wrong, was it 20% of people were actually happy that the strategy was going to meet community needs? Which again seems strikingly low. So I think framing it as 66% are happy or neutral, you could equally say 80% of the respondents were either unhappy or neutral. I'll make a point later that will provide the relevance to that question, but do you think it's equally fair to say that 80% of the respondents were either unhappy or neutral?
I'm just going to start off with a comment that We've described to you that we had multiple spheres of engagement or channels of engagement, one of which was have your say.
The question's just about the graph.
I know that, but it's just about have your say online,
Yep.
for which there's, from memory, I think 24 people responded. 24 people responded. That is not a summary of everybody that was engaged with throughout the consultation. So in terms of what we've summarised, it is only about what's come through from Have Your Say. So that's not to indicate overall the feedback that we received.
Okay. So of the people who fed back through Have Your Say, is it not equally correct to say that 80% of them were either unhappy or neutral? Okay, so the only answer is yes, so I'll move on to my next question. In terms of the...
I think... Sorry,
Okay,
I think
sure.
the team did want to provide an answer.
Logically, the only answer is yes, but sure.
Yeah, I think there's 2 points here. The first question we asked, which is in the Appendix A, is will the strategy help address the needs of our community and provide increased local opportunity? And it was 50-50. Some of the feedback we had was around the fact that council should not invest in economic development rather than about the strategy itself, if that's useful. The second question that we asked was, do you support our approach? 11 people, 45% said they were neutral. 5 people, which is 20% or 21%, said happy, and 8 people said they were unhappy, which was 33%. The feedback, the written feedback that was associated with this, again, of those who were unhappy, many of them talked about the fact that council should not be engaged in economic development, and they also provided feedback around affordability and steps that council should take in other places of our work. So yes, I can see your point. Bottom line is 11 people said they were neutral, which means they didn't say that they were happy or unhappy. We've said that 66% of people in total indicated that they were either happy or neutral, which is what we've reported in the report in front of you.
Sure. And my question is simply, is it not equally true to say that 80% of the respondents were either unhappy or neutral?
Which has been responded to as
yes.
yes.
I have,
Yeah.
yes.
It's
Yes.
actually a yes-no question, but that's okay. In terms of the summary of feedback from the construction industry group, are we happy that what we've put down in the strategy is fit for purpose?
When we receive feedback from different clusters or sectors, and we close the loop by going back to them and sharing what had been incorporated, I think it would be safe to say that in the regulatory space, there's a lot of desire to see improvements, and the discussion that we've had around that, and I say we, wasn't me, but the discussion around it was that things need to be in the right place. So in terms of the ED strategy itself and its focus, it seems to be what's in there is appropriate. That's not to say that other work is not is not underway, and that further engagement with the sector is planned more appropriately between council and that sector rather than through the ED strategy itself. So in short, yes.
Okay. So just in terms of the messaging here and the way that things are being communicated, it's being communicated here that opportunity was identified to make the regulatory issues a strategic priority. Would it not be more correct to actually say that this requirement was added reluctantly after significant effort from the construction industry group, given the resistance that it's faced?
Point of order, Madam Chair.
Yeah, Mayor Holbrook.
we're in question time. That's not really a question for staff. It's more a matter of opinion and should more appropriately be expressed through debate.
Yeah, I'll agree with that.
Sure, of course. Okay, so moving to the summary of feedback from Kapiti Business Chamber. It says that feedback from the Chamber had been considered and addressed in previous decisions. Could you just outline how it was considered and addressed?
I think the comment I'm going to make is that the substantive content that you endorsed earlier this year included the Chamber's response. Since then, the Chamber has provided no further feedback and provided advice to us that they do not wish to provide any further feedback. So in terms of this last round of consultation, given that you've already endorsed the substantive content, we've looked at the feedback we've subsequently received and determined from that whether there were things that were additional things to change. So I can let you know that I met with the chair of the Chamber last week and confirmed with the chair that they had no further comments that they wanted to make in terms of the strategy.
Sure. So the reference there is to feedback they provided through the direction of travel, but didn't they provide feedback through all manner of actions, LTP, various meetings, all kinds of ways as well? Yes, and I don't have that all to hand. We're sharing with you the feedback we had from the Chamber, which is recorded in the document. Okay, just seems a bit unfair to sort of minimise, I think, what feedback. Yep, sure.
Mayor Holbrook.
I'm engaging in debate during.
Councillor Wilson.
I do it all the time.
You do, Nigel.
Yeah, no, sorry, I'm in debate too, so I don't want to get castigated.
Okay, so should we... Councillor Pravanov. Oh, sorry, you're still on mute, Councillor Pravanov.
There we are. Thank you. Sorry. So I just wanted to check on, I suppose, the actions that are going to occur, because when you look at the stakeholder group, they provided key feedback. It said notes, and then it says council action to feedback. Now, I'm just wanting to know how this is captured, and I suppose I'm specifically referring to the CWB group and their response. It says no changes to strategy requested, however, comments around areas for opportunity noted for progress in relation to progress areas and action plans. So how does that, where does that all fit in here? And is that going to be available for people when they look at this document going forward?
In relation to the specific comments from the CWB, and I will say they were well received. I think the comments relate to the actions that are actually proposed to occur underneath the economic development strategy. The Economic Development Kotahitanga Board is engaged with the CWB. The CWB is connected to our Tourism Advisory Board, and there has been, I'm going to say there's connections and work underway to look at the opportunity of our tracks and trails in the context of tourism. So that is active and already in track. Some of those comments relate to that work and, of course, have been shared with relevant leads on those actions.
Okay, thank you. So then on page, in our report, I'm just trying to figure out where it is, page 123, this is in Appendix 1. It talks about, it shows the work streams, the Kapiti Tech Cluster, Food and Beverage, Tourism Cluster, Creative Industries. Have those work streams, and I assume that you can click on those, because when I've tried, we obviously can't click on it because it's not working. But when I've tried to find that tourism cluster on the website now, I can't actually find it. Is it actually already set up? I was just trying to figure out what it actually was saying.
Sorry, Councillor, just to confirm that the site is not live, so you won't be able to click into it, but all of the detail is there. So I'll take a follow-up action to circulate a link to the site so that you can have a look at it.
Okay, thank you. So those work streams, are they, I suppose what I was meaning is, are those work streams already on the website live and they're just being all connected together, or those work streams are all web pages that are being set up to go live as well?
At the moment, they aren't linked and connected on the Business Kapiti website, so this will be a new feature that we are adding in addition to the current content.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Pravanov. All right, I'm aware Deputy Mayor Kirby would like to move the recommendations under A on page 17. Can I have someone who would like to second? Councillor Cofford, right of introduction. Deputy Mayor Kirby. Yep, just noting. Cool. Any debate? Councillor Wilson.
Yep. Yeah, I just note that this is just noting, and I concur with Comrade Cooper here about the endorse word. It wasn't endorsed by everybody. I had asked about why the creative sector wasn't meaningfully engaged with, and this just confirms that they weren't. There'd obviously been some feedback from the public arts panel, but the sector hasn't been engaged with. That was a primary concern for me, because that's what I would be driving. Anyway, I'll just reiterate what I've said before. I think our internal business development staff and management are doing an excellent job. Ultimately, this comes down to whether or not you want to privatise your economic development, or you want to keep it in-house, and my preference is always that it would be kept in-house. I like the idea of an holistic approach. I think what you do when you silo out these sorts of things, they don't take an holistic approach. Business development, for instance, in the absence of a wider context about what council does and how it does it, given that council's funding this through public money, I think that's the smart way to go. But this is just, we're noting that this is happening, and it's happening. So I wish them all the best.
Great, thank you, Councillor Halliday.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that we are noting in regards to this as well. I guess in noting business actually directing business, I think it's not a bad thing as such. But we'll see how that goes, and that's part of all this. We're going to see how this goes as an approach. Two things I just wanted to comment on. First was, what I'm really percentages have been talked to here and bandied about, and this is a problem I feel we face as councillors, is that 11 people push back against this, 11 people. So all of a sudden a percentage of 30% is being talked about, and then the community takes that percentage and goes, the community is saying that that the community doesn't support this, and that's not the case. This is a aspect of the community that actually contribute to this. Now, I'm not taking anything away from anyone's ability to agree or disagree with something, but it gets frustrating with regards to when the numbers are so low that then out in the community this information is cherry picked and then made to paint certain pictures and create certain narratives, which I find very challenging as stuff. But the one thing another thing I wanted to comment on was, it was fantastic to see the construction industry information being adopted into the economic development strategy. I'm very aware that council has been directed by this table with regards to working in the regulatory space, and I know there's work going on there, but I think it's very, very important, especially with businesses that are interacting with council in the regulatory space, to have the assistance of economic development or the economic development process to assist them where they can, or to work in a collaborative way, shall we say. And the key word there for me was collaboration. When they are striking problems, or even at the beginning of the process, so that we can avoid problems through the process, so that we are actually giving credence to the fact that we are open for business. And that, to me, a big part of that is what the economic development, well, for me, a big part of the economic development moving forward is playing their part in helping in that regulatory space as well. So I'm glad that's included in there and we can reference that as well. Other than that, onwards and upwards.
Thank you. Bede Larissy.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I suppose it's good to get it to this stage. It's been identified as a priority by council, and needs to move forward. I guess I just want to yet again express my unhappiness about the quality of the engagement on this. I think when one of your key and sort of stakeholder groups decides to not engage anymore, it shouldn't be responded to with relief, but should be taken as a sign of concern in terms of what's going on. I've sat in meetings where people's ears have been closed and people's input has been forced out of the conversation, literally, and the conversation never fed back into. It has not been even good, let alone great. And I've been involved in a number of parts of it. So, yep, it'll go forward despite what I think or say or do. But I'm not confident that this has been done on the back of quality engagement within the business community. I think I'll leave it there.
Thanks, Bede. Councillor Warwick.
Mine's just a comment on wording on page 139, and it's not a criticism, but where the last little paragraph, where much less visible but cumulatively greater is the clientele of walkers, runners and riders, family groups, doesn't specify cycling, horse riding as two different things. And actually, Kapiti has got a huge opportunity here. I've just had contact from someone who's bringing 9 Pony Club kids wanting accommodation for a long weekend to be able to ride our tracks. We've got Hawke's Bay visitors with their horses coming here because we're known as a council that is inclusive, and we've got a lot of opportunity. And just asking if we could specify the clientele of walkers, runners, cyclists and horse riders just as a little, just as, I don't know, this document is live, so we can change wording or not. It's in the appendices, just to clarify.
Yeah, I think we can circle back round on that offline, but I think it's been noted by.
Because it is an untapped opportunity that is huge. There is very, very few places in New Zealand with the amount of inclusion that we offer here.
Yeah, I think staff have noted that. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Matthew, did you want to? Oh, we're in debate, so actually, could we circle back offline? Yeah, thank you. Councillor Cooper.
Yeah, I think as everyone should know, I didn't support the strategy. I think it's a terrible strategy, and the issues that Bede has highlighted, and Shelley and Councillor Nigel, Mr. Wilson, as a result of the strategy. However, saying that, this paper for me, it's notes, and what it really does, my not liking the strategy doesn't take away from the hours and hours of work that council staff have put in, and for that matter, the EDKB board. And they have put their heart and soul into it and believe in the strategy. And so I'm happy to support the noting in the motion in that it reflects their hard work and commitment to the strategy. And although I don't believe it's a good strategy, I wish all the best for those who will be implementing it, and all the best to our businesses and economic development moving forward.
Thank you, Mayor Holbrook.
I do realise this is just for noting, but I'm going to take my opportunity to say a couple of things. So it's hard to be all things to all people. And this is the third economic development strategy I've been around for. And there's always heated discussion about what should be in there, what direction it should take. Because the sector that you're dealing with are strategists themselves. And that makes it really challenging. We've never had anything about regulation in our strategies before, which is why I pushed back when they came and talked about it last time. But I stand corrected. It was a completely appropriate thing to do, and it's now embedded in the strategy, which is a fantastic move forward. So we have listened and we have included other things and we have responded as best we can. I love that it's not in hard copy, firstly because I like trees and I don't use a lot of paper myself, but secondly because it can be a living document and we can keep engaging and we can keep improving and we can keep moving with the external pressures too that are happening. I came from a Prime Minister's breakfast this morning where he talked about the fact that the government needs to create the conditions for success. And we in local government need to do that too. So we need to be doing this work and we need to be pushing it forward. And I think that this is a really good living document that we can progress as we set up our trust, as we establish trust in a different way of using the word trust, and move forward to support economic development. Now, I'm just going to say something a little bit political. I do wish central government would support us in the importance of this work, because it's not just pipes and roads that local government needs to support. It's also business and economic development. And if they want conditions for success in this country, then they need to be a bit more vocal about the fact that this is an important piece of work that we support. Don't necessarily deliver, but need to support at a local level. I just wanted to take the opportunity to say that, but well done to the team, and I look forward to seeing this delivered.
Simon Black.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Kia ora tātou, everyone. I'd like to just reiterate some of the comments that Mayor and other people have said. It's huge. This is a huge area. Kapiti's got such a diverse amount of business, and getting a plan on the table is a good achievement. It may not cover everything, but it's a start. And it also, if you don't agree with it, I think you've got plenty of opportunity to actually have input to whatever the direction it takes from this point onwards. One of the prongs which I thought we were going to support more were the tech cluster and the local tech, and that doesn't come out strongly enough, I don't believe, in this strategy. Personal point of view. But what also an observation being is that if we're going to have survey information displayed and it's not compelling information, it's going to cause more confusion than anything else, and it's not really representative of probably the discussions we actually have had. I would suggest that if we're going to have a survey, we should probably manually take data from all consultation so that we can provide one set of representative information to everyone, not just from one survey, from one demographic, from one tech-savvy part of our community.
That's a really, great feedback.
Yeah.
Valid suggestion, thank you.
Otherwise, let's just go and move forward. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Simon. Right of reply, Deputy Mayor Kirby.
Yeah, seeing as I didn't comment at the start, I'll comment now. Thanks to the staff. I think landing some work in this space, it's a very, working with businesses and across the diversity, as Mr. Black has already mentioned, is very difficult, especially when you've got people that are entrepreneurial and they're looking to push the boundaries all the time and that kind of thing, which is often happening in the Kapiti Coast District. So thank you for the work that's been done in this. I do again note that it is a noting paper, and that was an incredibly long reiteration of debates that we've had previously around this table. So that'll be my right of reply. Thanks to staff for the work they've done here. Thank you.
No, acknowledging that point as well. But I felt like, people had things to contribute. We've got time. Good to have the discussion while it's on the agenda. So, thanks for the culmination of work and conversations that have led to it getting to this point, and also noting that a lot of the engagement happened over kind of the Christmas period and the beginning of the new year, and that's a lot of work for staff to have been doing kind of in that period as well. So we appreciate it, and thank you. So moved and seconded. All those in favour? Aye. Against? That is carried. Thank you. And Matthew, will circle back on the comment that you wanted to make. Apologies that we needed to just keep moving through the process. Great, thanks staff. So I think we'll just push on and try and, just try and get through this last paper. And then, then we've finished anyways. So item 9.3, contract under delegated authority. Sean, are you coming up to the table? Sorry, I know we're moving quite swiftly, but took you by surprise. Oh yeah, swiftly. Great.
Thank you, Madam
Sure.
Chair. There's one contract. Just sorry, I'm going to open the paper. One contract awarded to, I think it was Tartners, for a water main renewal replacement. There were three. We went out invited three separate contractors, got responses from two, and awarded the work to the lowest conforming tender for $292,000. $292,000. So happy to answer any questions.
Great. Questions, Councillor Wilson, or are you happy to move?
Just move. Yeah, it's noting.
Yeah. Cool. A seconder? I'll second it from the chair. Right of introduction. Yeah.
Just a noting paper.
Okay, could you please turn your microphone off, Councillor Wilson? Amazing. Councillor Halliday.
Look, I just want to say, although it's a noting paper, this is what public transparency is all about.
Yep.
And it's also to appreciate the information coming through.
Perfect. Any other debate? Right of reply.
Okay, I'll just use my right of reply to acknowledge that local content is estimated at 95%. Very important. Well done.
Yeah. Thanks for highlighting that. Okay, no further debate. All those in favour? Aye. Against? That is carried. Thank you, Sean. Very easy job. Oh yeah, Jocelyn, hopefully you're noting your votes somewhere. Yeah. Okay, so moving on to confirmation of minutes, page 25, from the meeting of the 13th of March. I'm happy to move with a thanks to the staff for, again, the excellent minutes, the diligent work behind the computer, behind the screen. Who would like to second those? Yep, Councillor Wilson. All those in favour? Aye. Against? That's carried. And that takes us to our closing karakia. Kia tau ngā manaakitanga ki runga i a tātou katoa, kia hua ai te makihikihi e ki ana, kia toi te kopu, kia toi te reo, kia toi te wairua, kia tau te mauri, ki roto i a mātou mahi katoa i tēnei rā, haumi e hui e tākia. Great, thank you everyone for your attendance.